Rejected Omega begged the Alpha King to hide her from her mate. What he did next changed everything. The sun had long vanished behind the jagged peaks of the Moonfall Kingdom, leaving the forest bathed in silver light. Shadows twisted between the ancient trees, and the air was heavy with the scent of moss and wet earth. In the depths of this forest, a young Omega named Lyra ran. Her small, swift feet barely made a sound over the fallen leaves, but the pounding of her heart seemed deafening. She had never imagined this night would come, rejected, abandoned. The words still echoed cruelly in her ears. "You are not worthy, you are not my mate." Her mate's voice had been cold, firm, and final. He had looked at her as though she were a stranger, and the look in his eyes had cut deeper than any blade. Lyra stumbled over a root, catching herself against the rough bark of a tree. Tears burned her cheeks, but she refused to let them fall. She had no one to cry for her. The pack that had once promised protection and belonging had turned its back. She was nothing now. And yet, deep within her chest, there was a flicker of hope, a faint whisper that perhaps she could survive this night. Perhaps someone or something might hear her plea. She remembered the stories whispered among the villagers, stories of the Alpha King Kalen. Feared by all, the king ruled from his castle high upon the cliffs. Legends told of his dark power and his unyielding justice. Some said he was cruel. Some said he was merciful, but only to those who were worthy in his eyes. Lyra did not know if she was worthy. She barely knew who she was anymore. But in her desperation, she whispered into the night, her voice trembling yet strong, "Please, someone protect me. Hide me from him." The wind carried her words far into the forest, and for a moment it seemed as though the trees themselves leaned closer, listening. Then a shadow moved along the edge of her vision. She froze, fear prickling her spine. A figure emerged from the darkness. Tall, broad, with a presence that seemed to bend the night around him. His eyes glowed faintly in the silver light, and his voice, deep and commanding, cut through the stillness. "You called for me," the man said. Lyra's breath caught. Her instincts screamed to run, yet something in the way he looked at her, neither judging nor mocking, only observing, made her pause. He was the Alpha King Kalen. She had heard the stories, the warnings. None survived encounters with him unscathed. "Why, you are Kalen," she stammered. "I am," he replied, his voice steady like the calm before a storm. "And you are lost, little Omega. Tell me your name." "Lyra," she whispered. Her throat was dry and her hands shook. I need you to hide me. My mate, he doesn't want me. He will hurt me." Kalen's gaze softened, just enough to make her feel seen. He stepped closer, the shadows seeming to bend away from him as though afraid. "Why should I care for one rejected by her own?" Lyra's chest tightened. I don't know. I have no one else. Please, I beg you." For a long moment he said nothing. He studied her, and Lyra could feel the weight of his judgment pressing against her. Then slowly he nodded. "You shall come with me," he said, "and I will keep you hidden. But know this, you are entering a world you do not yet understand. My protection comes with its own rules." Lyra nodded eagerly, hope sparking in her chest. She didn't care about rules. She only cared about being safe. The journey to Kalen's castle was long and treacherous. The path wound through cliffs and forests shrouded in mist, and the air grew colder as they climbed. Lyra kept close to him, feeling a strange sense of security in his shadow, though fear still lingered. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly, after hours of silence. Kalen did not answer immediately. Instead, he gestured to the night sky, where the twin moons of Moonfall hung high, casting silver light over the trees. "Because even in darkness, some are worth saving. You may not see it yet, Omega, but strength often hides in the most fragile of hearts." Lyra's chest warmed at his words, though her fear did not fully vanish. The mention of strength made her wonder, did she have any strength left at all? Finally, they reached the edge of a high cliff. Below lay a vast valley, shrouded in fog. At its highest point stood Kalen's castle, carved from black stone and glowing faintly with runes that pulsed like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. It was both magnificent and terrifying, a place that seemed alive with magic. "You will stay within these walls," Kalen said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Outside, the world is cruel. Your mate is not the only danger. Shadows lurk where you least expect them. Trust no one." Lyra swallowed hard. She had never been inside a castle before, let alone one like this. Its halls were vast, filled with towering windows, flickering torches, and intricate carvings that seemed almost alive. Yet despite its grandeur, it was silent, empty, and lonely, a mirror of Kalen himself. "Here you are safe," he said, "but safety does not mean comfort. You will learn the ways of this place and you will obey its rules. Only then can you remain." Lyra nodded, understanding that she had little choice. And yet, as she looked at Kalen, she felt a strange stirring in her chest. He was both fearsome and compelling. There was a sadness in his eyes, something deep and hidden, and for reasons she could not name, it drew her toward him. Days passed, and Lyra began to settle into the strange rhythms of the castle. She learned which corridors were safe, which rooms were forbidden, and how to read the faint magical runes that protected the walls. Kalen rarely smiled, but when he did, it was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He did not coddle her. He expected her to learn, to survive, to grow stronger. And yet, even with his protection, the fear of her mate's return haunted her. Every night she listened to the wind and the creaking of the castle, imagining him finding her, dragging her back into humiliation and pain. She had begged Kalen to hide her, but the thought of being discovered again made her stomach churn. One evening, as she walked along the highest balcony, she whispered into the night, "Please keep him away. Please, don't let him find me." The wind seemed to answer her, carrying her plea across the cliffs. But as she looked into the distance, a shadow moved against the moonlight, her breath caught. Kalen stepped behind her, his presence a protective barrier. "Do not be afraid," he said softly. "He is coming, but I will not let him reach you. You will see, Omega, the strength within you will shine even in the darkest night." Lyra turned to him, searching his eyes. There was no malice there, only certainty and something else she could not name, trust, care, something she had not felt in a long time. And yet the shadow in the distance grew closer. The wind carried faint sounds, footsteps, the rustle of leaves, and the faintest whisper of cruel laughter. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. Her mate had found her trail, and he would not stop until he had what he wanted. Kalen placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone," he said. "I have sworn to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Tonight, you will see what it means to be under my guard." The first night in Kalen's castle ended with a tension that neither spoke aloud. Lyra could not sleep, her mind racing with fear and wonder. Who was this man who had saved her? Why had he answered her plea when no one else would? And most importantly, what would happen when her mate arrived at the gates, bringing danger and darkness with him? As the moons of moonfall rose high in the sky, casting silver light across the castle towers, Lyra realized that her life had changed forever. She was no longer the rejected Omega hiding from her fate. She was under the protection of the Alpha King himself, and the future, though uncertain, held a strange promise. And yet, somewhere deep in the forest, her mate moved closer, unaware that the threads of fate were already weaving a new destiny, one that would bind Lyra, Kalen, and the shadows that surrounded them in ways no one could yet imagine. The night was far from over. And Lyra knew, with a trembling certainty, that the true test had only just begun. The castle of the Alpha King Kalen rose like a shadow against the cliffs, black stone etched with ancient runes that pulsed faintly under the twin moons. Inside, the halls were wide and silent, lit by flickering torches whose flames danced across tapestries depicting kings and battles long past. Lyra walked carefully behind Kalen, her heart still pounding from the journey up the mist-covered mountains. Every sound echoed in the empty halls, making her feel both small and exposed. Kalen led her through corridors that twisted like the roots of some ancient tree, until they reached a room high in the tallest tower. The windows overlooked the jagged cliffs and the dark forest below. Lyra gasped at the sight. The wind tossed her hair, carrying the scent of the mountains and the faint, distant sound of wolves howling. "This will be your room," Kalen said, his voice calm and commanding. "It is safe here, but you must remain within the walls of the castle until your mate's pursuit ends. The forest outside is not forgiving and your enemies are relentless." Lyra looked around the chamber. It was simple, yet elegant. A bed covered in soft furs sat against one wall, and a small desk held scrolls and books with strange symbols. The walls themselves seemed alive, etched with faint glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. I will stay," she said quietly. "I promise." Kalen studied her, his expression unreadable. "You are frightened, and that is natural, but fear can either control you or guide you. Here, you will learn to let it guide you. You will grow stronger." Lyra nodded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that safety could exist somewhere, even if only for a little while. Days passed slowly in the castle. Kalen was a silent guardian, watching from the shadows. He did not coddle Lyra, nor did he ignore her. He expected her to observe, to listen, and to learn. She discovered hidden passages, ancient libraries filled with books about magic, history, and the old ways of the kingdom. Each day brought a new lesson, and with every lesson she began to feel less like a hunted creature and more like someone who could exist in this strange, magical world. One evening, as Lyra practiced walking quietly along the balcony, Kalen appeared beside her. He was silent at first, watching the forest below, where the fog twisted like living things among the trees. "Your mate will not stop," he said finally, his voice low. "He is foolish to chase what he cannot control, but he will come and you must be ready." Lyra shivered. I don't know if I can stop him. I'm not strong like you." Kalen turned to her, his piercing eyes meeting hers. "Strength is not always measured in power or size. Some of the greatest strength lies in courage, in persistence, in the ability to survive when all hope seems lost. You have that, Lyra. I see it." She felt a warmth rise in her chest at his words. For the first time since her mate had rejected her, someone believed in her. And yet a flicker of fear remained. Could she truly survive the storm that was coming? The next day, Kalen guided her through the castle library. Ancient books and scrolls lined every wall, and faint magical energy hummed in the air. He taught her to read the runes, to understand the subtle magic woven into the castle's stones. "You are more capable than you think," Kalen said, placing a hand on the book she held. His fingers brushed hers, and she felt a sudden shiver, not from cold but from the strange electricity of his presence. "The castle is alive, Lyra. It watches, it listens, and it will aid those it deems worthy." Lyra tried to focus on the runes, but her mind kept wandering to the mysterious man beside her. He was frightening and powerful, yet there was a softness hidden beneath the surface, something that hinted at compassion, at loneliness. And though she had only known him for a short time, she felt a pull toward him she could not explain. Days turned into nights, and nights into days. The rhythm of life in the castle became familiar. Kalen rarely spoke unless necessary, but his presence was constant, a steady force that both comforted and intimidated her. Lyra learned to move silently through the halls, to listen to the whispers of the castle walls, and to understand the subtle signs that warned of danger. One evening, Kalen took her to the highest tower. The wind whipped around them, tugging at her hair and the edges of her cloak. Below, the forest stretched endlessly, dark and mysterious. "Look," he said, pointing toward the distant trees. "Your mate moves through the forest. He is persistent, but he is not prepared for what lies ahead. He cannot see what you and I see. He cannot understand the power that binds this place." Lyra's heart raced. She had not realized how close he had come. What will happen if he reaches the castle?" she whispered. Kalen's expression hardened. Then we will face him, but he will not succeed, not while I am here. Lyra nodded, her fear mingled with awe. She did not fully understand Kalen, but she trusted him. And she realized with a strange thrill that she did not want to hide from him, even as she sought his protection. Over the next few days, Kalen began to teach her more than just the castle's secrets. He taught her about the ancient magic of moonfall, the strength hidden within her own blood. Lyra listened carefully, absorbing every word. She felt herself growing stronger, not just physically, but in spirit. One night, as the twin moons shone high above, Kalen led her to a quiet courtyard. The air was crisp, and the scent of night-blooming flowers drifted on the wind. He showed her how to draw energy from the castle itself, how to feel the magic that pulsed through its walls and stones. "You have more power than you know," he said, "but it is not enough to simply have power. You must learn to control it, to trust yourself, and to act when the moment demands it." Lyra nodded, concentrating on the energy flowing through her. It was strange and thrilling, like nothing she had ever felt. A warmth spread through her chest, and for the first time she felt a sense of hope that she could survive, that she could stand against the darkness pursuing her. Yet, even as she trained, fear lingered. Every shadow seemed to move with a threat, every sound carried a hint of danger. Her mate was still out there, somewhere in the forest, his intentions unknown but clearly dangerous. Kalen noticed her tension and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Fear is not a weakness, Lyra. It is a guide. Learn from it, let it teach you. And know this, I will not let him touch you, not while I breathe." Lyra looked up at him, her chest tightening. She wanted to believe him, to trust him fully, but a part of her wondered why someone as powerful as Kalen would care for a frightened Omega like her. Still, the warmth in his eyes and the certainty in his voice eased her doubts. The nights passed with quiet training and cautious walks through the castle. Lyra began to notice small details she had missed before. The way the walls seemed to shift slightly, as though alive. The faint hum of magic beneath the floor. The gentle light that pulsed from the runes, guiding her steps. The castle was not just a refuge. It was a guardian, a living protector that had chosen her as much as Kalen had. And then, one evening, as the sky turned dark and the twin moons rose high, a strange feeling came over her. A chill ran down her spine, not from cold but from anticipation. Something was coming. She could feel it deep in her bones. Kalen appeared at her side, silent as always, and followed her gaze toward the forest. "He draws nearer," he said. "Your mate, but he is not the only danger. The forest watches, the shadows watch, and the magic of moonfall does not forgive lightly. Be ready." Lyra's heart pounded. She had trained, learned, and grown stronger, but fear still twisted in her chest. Yet alongside the fear, there was another feeling, something dangerous, something thrilling. A bond was forming between her and Kalen, one built on trust, protection, and an unspoken understanding that neither could yet name. As the wind swept through the towers and the castle walls seemed to hum with quiet energy, Lyra realized that her life had changed forever. She was no longer the rejected Omega, fleeing in the darkness. She was under the protection of the Alpha King, learning to embrace strength she had never known, and facing dangers she could barely imagine. And yet, the shadow of her mate grew ever closer, his presence a dark thread weaving through the night. The castle, alive with magic and Kalen's power, would soon be tested. Lyra stood at the balcony, the wind tugging at her cloak, and whispered to herself, "I will survive. I will be strong, and I will not run anymore." From the forest below came the faintest sound of movement, a whisper of danger carried on the wind. Lyra's breath caught. Her training, her courage, and the bond with Kalen would be tested sooner than she imagined. The night was quiet, but it was a calm before the storm. And Lyra knew, with a mixture of fear and anticipation, that everything was about to change. The first hint of danger came at midnight, carried on the cold wind that swept through the towers of Kalen's castle. Lyra woke suddenly, her heart hammering in her chest. The runes along the walls flickered faintly, warning her of an approaching presence. She had learned to trust the castle, and tonight it whispered of shadows moving outside, among the twisted trees of the forest. Kalen was already awake, standing silently by her window. His eyes, dark and piercing, scanned the fog below. Lyra shivered as he turned toward her. "He is near," he said quietly. "Your mate is close and he is not alone. Something dark has attached itself to him." Lyra's stomach tightened. She had feared this moment, but hearing it confirmed made her chest ache with dread. "Dark?" she asked. "What do you mean?" Kalen's jaw tightened. "He has been touched by a curse, one that feeds on anger, jealousy, and fear. He will not simply harm you. He will try to destroy everything that stands in his way." Lyra swallowed hard. She had expected danger, but not this. Her mate's rejection had already wounded her, yet now it seemed that he had become something she could not face alone. She looked at Kalen, fear and hope tangled together. "You will not face him alone," Kalen said, reading her expression. "We will face him together, but you must trust yourself. Your strength is rising. You must believe in it." The next day, Kalen began to prepare her more seriously. He guided her through the castle's ancient armory, showing her protective charms and magical talismans that could ward off dark forces. He instructed her on how to sense danger before it reached them, how to use her growing magical energy to shield herself, and how to remain calm when fear threatened to overwhelm her. Lyra listened carefully, her hands trembling as she touched the cold stones and glowing runes. She felt a growing power within her, something that had been buried beneath her fear and rejection. Every lesson brought a new confidence, yet she knew she was not ready for the full test. That evening, Kalen led her to a hidden courtyard beneath the castle. The moonlight cast long shadows across the cobblestones, and the air was filled with the scent of night-blooming flowers. He handed her a small crystal, warm to the touch. "This is your anchor," he said. "When fear or doubt comes, hold it. Focus on it. Let it remind you of your strength, of your purpose. You are not the same Omega who ran through the forest in terror. You are stronger now." Lyra took the crystal, feeling its warmth seep into her hands and her chest. She nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. I will try." Kalen studied her for a long moment. "Do not try, do it. Trust yourself." Days passed in preparation, yet the shadow of her mate's approach grew heavier. Lyra could feel it in the walls of the castle, in the flicker of the torches, and in the subtle whispers of the wind. Kalen remained calm, but she noticed the tension in his shoulders and the way his eyes flicked toward the forest more often than before. One afternoon, Lyra ventured into the library, seeking distraction among the ancient tomes. She traced her fingers along the spines, feeling the magic that lingered in the air. Some of the books whispered secrets in languages she did not yet understand, yet she felt drawn to their knowledge. It was in the quiet of the library that she realized how far she had come. She was learning, growing, and no longer the frightened Omega who had begged Kalen for protection. Her reflection in the glass of a tall window startled her. Gone was the wide-eyed, trembling girl she remembered from the forest. In her place was someone with resolve, with courage, and with a strange light in her eyes that hinted at the power she had yet to fully understand. That evening, Kalen found her at the balcony. The wind tugged at her cloak, tossing her hair across her face. He said nothing at first, simply standing beside her. The castle stretched around them, alive with quiet magic. "You are ready," he said finally. "Not for every challenge, but for the one that comes now. He will not simply appear. He will test you, challenge you, and seek to break your spirit, but you are not alone." Lyra turned to him, her heart tightening. I don't know if I can fight him. He was my mate once, and her voice caught in her throat. "I am afraid of what he has become." Kalen's gaze softened. "Fear is natural, but do not let it control you. You are stronger than you know, Lyra, and I will be by your side." The night brought more than fear. It brought the sound of the forest alive with movement. Kaelin moved silently to the outer walls, Lyra following closely. She had learned to sense the subtle signs, the shift in the air, the faint whispers in the leaves. Something was coming, and it was not just her mate. The first encounter was sudden. Shadows moved through the mist, and Lyra felt a wave of dark energy pressing against her chest. Her mate appeared, but he was changed. His eyes glowed with a strange fire, and the darkness clung to him like a living thing. Kaelin stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the figure from her past. "You will not touch her," he commanded. His voice carried across the courtyard, echoing like thunder against the castle walls. Her mate laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think you can protect her? She belongs to me." The words were twisted by the dark magic that now controlled him. Lyra felt fear rise, but she clenched the crystal Kaelin had given her. A warmth spread through her chest, and she focused on it, letting it guide her. The shadows around her mate flickered and shifted, sensing the power within her. Kaelin moved with precision, his every gesture controlled and powerful. Lyra watched, her heart racing, as he used magic to shield her, creating barriers of light and shadow that pushed her mate back. She realized with a sudden clarity that she could help. "Focus on the light within you," Kaelin instructed, his voice calm but urgent. "You can influence him, weaken the darkness that binds him. Trust yourself." Lyra nodded, drawing on the energy that pulsed through the castle. She focused, feeling the warmth spread from the crystal through her hands and into her chest. She imagined the darkness leaving him, imagined the person he had once been. And for a brief moment she saw it flicker, the man she had loved, lost, and mourned. The darkness around him roared and he lashed out, but Kaelin's shields held strong. Lyra added her energy, small but persistent, weaving it into the magical barriers. The clash was tense, a battle of wills and power, shadow and light. Suddenly, the darkness surged toward her, and she felt herself being pulled into its grip. Panic rose, but Kaelin's hand was there, steadying her. "Do not fight it with fear," he said. "Use your strength, your courage. You are not powerless." Lyra inhaled deeply, letting the fear pass through her. She focused, imagining the warmth of the crystal, the safety of the castle, and the strength Kaelin had shown her. The darkness faltered, writhing against the combined power of Kaelin and her own growing energy. Her mate staggered, the dark magic surrounding him flickering and weakening. For a brief moment, he looked human again, and Lyra felt a pang of sorrow and pity. But she also knew that he had chosen a path of destruction. She could not allow compassion to endanger her. With a final surge, Kaelin and Lyra combined their energy, pushing the darkness back. The shadows recoiled, shrieking into the night, and her mate collapsed to the ground, unconscious but alive. The danger was not fully gone, but the immediate threat had been contained. Kaelin turned to Lyra, his expression serious yet proud. "You did well. Do you see now? You are stronger than you believed, and together we are unstoppable." Lyra's chest swelled with a mix of relief and awe. She had faced the fear that had once paralyzed her, and she had contributed to the defense of the castle, to her own protection. The sense of empowerment was intoxicating, yet she also felt the weight of what was to come. This was only the beginning. As they returned to the safety of the inner halls, Lyra glanced at Kaelin. He was silent, his gaze distant, as though he were calculating the dangers still to come. But she noticed something else too, something subtle but undeniable. A bond was forming, one born of trust, protection, and shared trials. That night, Lyra lay in her chamber, the crystal warm in her hands. The events of the evening replayed in her mind, the darkness, the struggle, the fear, and the surge of power. She realized she was no longer the frightened Omega who had run through the forest. She was becoming someone stronger, capable, and resilient. And yet, even as she felt this newfound strength, a quiet unease settled over her. Her mate had been defeated for now, but the darkness he carried was powerful. It would return, perhaps stronger, perhaps more cunning. Lyra closed her eyes, drawing on the warmth of the crystal and the protection of Kaelin. The castle hummed softly around her, alive with magic and vigilance. She knew that the coming days would test her in ways she could not yet imagine, but she was ready, or at least she would try to be. And beside her the Alpha King watched over her, a silent guardian in the shadows, a presence that was both frightening and comforting. The night passed quietly, but the storm of fate was gathering. And Lyra understood, with a mix of fear and determination, that she was no longer running from her destiny. She was stepping into it. The castle of Caelan stood in quiet tension as the first light of dawn touched its black towers. Mist clung to the cliffs like ghostly fingers, curling through the valleys and forest below. Inside, the halls were alive with the faint hum of magic, the runes along the walls glowing brighter than usual, as if sensing the coming storm. Lyra sat in her chamber, the crystal warm in her hand, heart pounding with anticipation. She had grown stronger in the past days, learning to trust herself, her instincts, and the power within her. But the shadow of her mate, and the darkness that now clung to him, still loomed. He had been defeated once, yet she knew the battle was far from over. Caelan entered silently, his dark cloak flowing behind him. His presence filled the room, commanding yet calm. He knelt before her, his piercing eyes meeting hers. "Lyra," he said, his voice low and steady, "today we face what cannot be ignored. Your mate will return, stronger, more dangerous. But together we are ready. You have grown, and your strength is undeniable. Tonight we end this." Lyra nodded, gripping the crystal tightly. She felt the warmth spread through her chest, filling her with courage. "I am ready," she whispered, though a small tremor of fear lingered. Caelan placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Fear is natural, but do not let it rule you. You have faced shadows before and survived. You will do so again, and you will stand beside me, not behind me. We face this together." The castle guards had taken positions along the walls, yet Caelan relied not on them but on the magic woven into the stones themselves. The walls shimmered faintly, a protective barrier that extended beyond sight. The twin moons rose high, casting silver light over the cliffs and forest. From the distance came the sound of movement, faint at first, then growing louder, the unmistakable crunch of boots on the forest floor, the snap of branches underfoot. Lyra felt the tension coil around her like a living thing. Her mate emerged from the mist, his form twisted by the dark magic that had consumed him. His eyes glowed red, and shadows clung to him, writhing like serpents. He moved with purpose, relentless and terrifying. Caelan stepped forward, his presence commanding the space between them. Shadows gathered around him as well, not of darkness but of controlled power. The castle seemed to pulse with energy, alive and protective. "You will not touch her," Caelan said, his voice carrying across the courtyard, deep and unwavering. "This ends tonight." Her mate laughed, a sound harsh and bitter, twisted by the curse. "You think you can stop me? She is mine. She always was." Lyra's heart raced, but she drew upon the warmth of the crystal, letting it flow through her. She felt the energy of the castle respond to her, the runes along the walls pulsing in harmony with her heartbeat. She was no longer powerless. Caelan moved with precise control, weaving barriers of magic that shielded them both. Lyra followed his guidance, her hands tracing the patterns in the air, channeling her energy into the protection spell. Together, their power created a sphere of light that pushed the darkness back. The battle was not one of weapons but of wills. Shadows collided with light, twisting and writhing, each surge of power testing their strength, courage, and resolve. Lyra felt fear rise, but she remembered Caelan's words, "Trust yourself. You are stronger than you know." She focused, feeling the warmth of the crystal anchor her. She imagined the person her mate had once been, the friend she had known before darkness claimed him. She sent that image into the sphere of protection, letting it guide the energy, weaken the shadows that bound him. The dark magic shrieked and lashed out, but Caelan's shields held. Lyra added her strength, weaving her light into the defenses, and for a moment her mate faltered. The red glow in his eyes flickered, and the shadows around him writhed as if in pain. "You can fight it," Lyra whispered, stepping closer. "I know the person you were is still in there. You don't have to let this darkness win." Her words seemed to reach him, though only for a brief instant. The glow in his eyes softened, a flicker of recognition passing through the crimson light. But the darkness fought back, forcing him to stagger. Kaelin moved beside her, placing a steady hand on her arm. "Do not falter. This is the moment we have trained for. Trust in yourself and trust in the bond we share." Lyra inhaled deeply, letting the fear and tension flow through her, focusing only on the warmth of the crystal and the energy of the castle. She felt the shadows weaken beneath their combined power, flickering and unraveling like smoke in sunlight. With a final surge, Kaelin and Lyra pushed forward, channeling every ounce of strength and will into the magic that bound the protective sphere. The darkness around her mate screamed, twisting and shrinking until it was finally expelled, leaving him collapsed on the ground, exhausted but alive. Lyra ran to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's over," she said softly. "You are free from the darkness." He looked at her, eyes clearing, the red glow fading. Confusion and relief mingled in his expression. He did not speak, only nodded slightly, understanding that the battle had ended. Kaelin stepped forward, his presence commanding the space, yet his expression softened as he looked at Lyra. "You did this," he said. "Your courage, your strength, it saved us all. Not just you, but him as well. You have grown into someone remarkable." Lyra's chest swelled with pride and relief. She had faced the fear that had haunted her, fought alongside the Alpha King, and helped save someone who had once caused her pain. She realized, for the first time, that she was no longer the frightened Omega hiding in the forest. She was a partner, strong and capable, ready to face the challenges of this magical world. As they walked back into the castle, the first light of dawn broke over the cliffs, casting silver rays across the towers. The forest below was quiet, the mist beginning to lift, revealing the land bathed in soft light. Kaelin and Lyra reached the highest balcony. She looked out at the world below, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in months. The storm of danger had passed, and for the first time she allowed herself to imagine a future free from fear. Kaelin stood beside her, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "The world beyond these walls is full of challenges, but together we can face them all. And you, Lyra, are no longer just an Omega. You are someone who can shape her own destiny." Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the rising sun. I understand now. I am stronger and I will not run anymore." Kaelin nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Good, that is all I ask. Strength and courage are not always measured in battle. Sometimes they are measured in the choice to stand and face what others would flee from." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the gentle wind and the soft rustle of leaves far below. In that quiet, Lyra felt a bond forming that went beyond protection. It was a connection born of trust, shared struggle, and understanding, a bond that would guide them through whatever lay ahead. The castle itself seemed to respond, its stones glowing faintly, runes pulsing in time with their heartbeat. The magic of Moonfall, ancient and powerful, recognized their courage and unity. Lyra felt it deep within her chest, a warmth that spread through her entire being, binding her to the castle, to Kaelin, and to her own strength. That evening, Kaelin brought her to the courtyard once more. The twin moons hung high, silver light spilling over the cobblestones. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Lyra, you have faced fear, darkness, and betrayal. You have grown beyond what you were. The world may test you again, but you are ready, and I will always stand beside you." Lyra looked up at him, feeling a rush of gratitude and something more, something she could not yet name. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For saving me, for believing in me." Her voice trailed, but Kaelin understood. "Do not thank me yet," he said softly. a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. "This is only the beginning of our journey. Together, we will face what comes and we will endure. But tonight rest. The darkness is gone, and for the first time in a long while you can breathe." Lyra nodded, letting the weight of relief settle in her chest. She felt safe, not because fear had vanished, but because she had learned to face it, to use it, and because Kaelin's presence reminded her that she was never truly alone. As she looked out at the mist-covered cliffs and the silver-lit forest below, Lyra knew the path ahead would not be easy. But she was no longer the rejected Omega who had fled into the shadows. She was strong, resilient, and capable of shaping her own destiny. And beside her, the Alpha King stood silently, a guardian, a mentor, and something more. The bond between them had grown through trials, courage, and shared struggle, forming a connection that would endure long after the shadows had passed. The night was calm, the air crisp and filled with the scent of magic and possibility. Lyra felt a quiet certainty, a knowledge that no matter what challenges awaited, she and Kaelin would face them together, unbroken and unafraid. The castle, alive with magic and ancient power, seemed to hum in approval. The storm had passed, but the story was not over. Lyra and Kaelin had faced the darkness, tamed it, and emerged stronger. And as the first rays of the twin moon's light faded, they knew that the future, though uncertain, was theirs to shape. Lyra smiled faintly, gripping the crystal in her hand. She had survived the shadows, embraced her strength, and discovered a courage she never knew existed. And beside her, Kaelin remained, a constant presence, guiding her, protecting her, and standing beside her in the battles yet to come. The sun rose over Moonfall, golden and promising. Lyra exhaled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. Her journey had only just begun, but for the first time she knew she was ready to face whatever came, with courage, hope, and the Alpha King at her side. The night was over, but their story, bound by trust, strength, and the magic of Moonfall, was only beginning.